Hello everyone and welcome to the top 20 best locations on the island. We're going to do zero introduction, so this is base location number 1. You are located here on a plateau on the northern part of the island. This is easily one of the top 5 best places on the map for PvE. You have quick access to the snow biome. Directly behind you, you have access to the location of Carno Island. You can build all along this plateau. There's an explorer note up there. Down below, you have a really cool flat space with the pond, and just over the other side of these trees here, you will find the oasis, which has access to organic polymer through the ducks, and the penguins are pretty far over there anyway, so quick access to a couple pieces here, lots of cementing paste, lots of trees and rocks for building purposes, and all the rare resources from both this mountain and this mountain. But also, it's very, very safe. The worst you will find here is a raptor, and you'll find this location located right here on the map. Now, going straight from this location to the next, as we did already reference it, we're going to move on over to the Oasis. This was easily one of the fan favorites in ASE, and it remains a favorite in ASA. As I mentioned previously, all the exact same resources and points of interest will apply to this location. But yeah, it's walled on all single sides, there's just a couple of entrances. It's a great scenic spot, lots of natural defense. A lot of people enjoy building here just because it looks so great and you have access to all the resources you need in a fairly close proximity. We're not going to detail or delay on that, so let's move on over straight to location 3. Oh, here's the map, by the way. If you're interested, it's a small little lake here at the very top of the map. But we're actually going to go straight from here to the next one. All we're going to do is just follow this river here, and as soon as you follow it, you'll find this massive set of ruins. One of the biggest sets of ruins here on the island. Let's pull out the map before we forget, and this is where it's located. Now, what makes this place great is you have the natural defense from the ruins themselves. You will find an explorer note right there at the very entrance. You can block this ramp off here easily with a gate. Then as you move your way back, you'll find there's another entrance here you can block off. You have lots of room to build with up here. And then even if you go down here, you'll actually notice on the inside, on the back, right over here, there is a cave that runs up underneath it that has all this natural protection. You do have that little hole there at the top, but it's really easy to defend with lots of room to go through and work with on the inside here. So even if you don't like the ruins, as long as you could deal with the roof here, you have a lot of natural protection. Makes it a lot easier to defend. Overall, it is a really great spot. You are also right there on the water. It is a not safe area, so you will certainly need to build some defenses, but it's also pretty hidden too if you don't destroy all the trees directly surrounding it. So it might be pretty easy to hide on an official server, outside of being pretty large in this frontal area, of course. But yeah, it's a pretty cool spot. Alright, now moving directly over from the ruins here, we're actually going to move straight on over to the next one, which you will find located just down the way here, which is going to be this massive plateau here in the middle. Now this lower plateau you can actually ramp up to, you'll walk straight up from the river to it. But this upper one here, there is no way to get up here without either building up to it or having a flyer, so it's extremely safe. All around you can see there's no way to get up here. It is fairly small, so you don't have a lot of room to work with, but if you notice you are directly next to this mountain. You also have this mountain here, and then you have the swamp and the redwoods just over there. This is where it's located on the map, just up the river. As you notice, they've all kind of been in a line, if you will, as you work your way over. Alright, I'm moving on over to the next location. The pillar is directly below us. We're just going to inch forward just a little bit, and this is easily one of my favorite locations on the map, and it's going to be this waterfall picturesque area here. You do have an explorer note up here, and again, it is easily defendable. This ramp here is the only way to get up to this area. It's actually quite large. You just can't see that because all of the trees that are here. You do have some metal nodes that spawn here as well, so try not to block those off for easy access to some metal near your base. And then as you come around the back, you will also notice in the very back here, there's also a small little cove where you can build. It's got some water down here, so if you want to build a starter base here possibly, since you have access to water, and it's easily defendable with the gate, then you could eventually move yourself up here for a larger base, once you have the resources and the tames to do so. And this is going to be located right here on the map. Alright, now move on over from this location. It's actually going to be a little bit of a journey. We're just going to fly up a little bit here, and you'll notice just over here there is a lake. Inside this lake here, you have actually access to a lot of different resources. Let's turn off the fog so you can see everything. But inside this lake, you'll see there's lots of different crystals to work with here, lots of metal nodes, so lots of great things to deal with. You do have to go through and deal with some of the piranhas and saber-tooths here. I've never seen a baryonyx here, but it would not surprise me if you could see one spawn here. So if you can handle the fish, though, for the most part, you have a lot of resources that are tucked away and hidden and not known by many. And then above it here, I'm actually going to be referencing this spot here, located here on the map. You do have these spaces here. They're not super flat, and you will see some gaps, but it is overlooking this whole area. And then inside these gaps, you will actually find that there is going to be one location that you can build with here to kind of start off with, if you will. And you can set up here kind of hidden, tucked away from everybody else if you are on like an official server and trying to hide. And then you can eventually go through and build out over here all along this upper plateau if you so choose. Or if you want something maybe a bit more humble, you can also build down over here. You can't exactly see it, but right over here there's also a decent flat spot to work with here. But yeah, don't forget you have access to all of these amazing resources right here. And then you do also have the metal mountain if need be. Everything else, though, is pretty far away. You do have Green Knob also, which is pretty close by. So yeah, it's a decent spot to build. And again, this is where it's located on the map. Now, going from this water lake here, we're going to be going just a tad bit up here. You'll see the ruin up here. It is a massive flat space to work with. Not a lot to say here. It is just an incredibly flat space, one of the largest on the island. It is huge and pretty hostile, too. So yeah, I would think this would be more of a solo spot than anything. The only downside is that the closest water source is probably going to be that lake there, so you will need to chain a couple of tanks to get over here. But if you're a builder and like flat space, this is probably the location for you. And this is where it's going to be located on the map. Now moving over to the next location, we're going to go straight from this location here, following the river down, heading towards the Green Obelisk. Once we are over at the Green Ob, you will see this rock that is jutting out. So inside this rock, you actually have two different bases. You have the one up here, which has the cliffside edge, and then up here you have a small little platform that you can work with, which you can block off right over here between this cliff edge and this cliff edge. There's not a lot of space, but what really makes it cool is on the back here, there's a small little cavern, and as you work your way down here, you will see that there's an entrance right here to it, so it's not completely blocked off or secure, but you do have some crystal spawns here on the bottom. It is fairly thin down here, and you got some room to work with here, so you can still hide away in here somewhat. And then you do have this entrance here, so even if you just wanted the lower section of this, it might be easier to defend than the upper section. And then you come back out over here, or you can just stay hidden away if you don't want nobody to take your stuff. The other option here, though, outside of this large entrance, is just to the left of it here. You will see this tree that's in the way. And inside this area here, you'll see a pretty large space to work with. You do have this big entrance here you'd want to block off, but it's actually fairly well hidden. And then on the other side here, you do also have a pretty small entrance in comparison that should be easy to block off as well. But yeah, if you want to live over here, it's a pretty cool spot. You are close to the Green Ob. This is where it's going to be located on the map. The resources you have access to are going to be there in that lake that I just mentioned. You do also have the metal mountain that's just over there, which is next to the Green Obelisk. But for some of the rare resources, you will certainly have to make a journey farther north to go through and obtain them. Alright, now from this location here, we're actually going to be turning around, facing the Green Obelisk, and essentially flying straight past it. You will see the plateau as we get closer to it, right over here. This is an excellent elevated position. This is definitely more of a beginner-friendly base, as the farther south you get on the island, the farther away you are for some of the better resources. But it's actually got a lot of space to work with. You do have some spinos that typically spawn here in the water, and you can occasionally find some baryonyx as well. So overall, it's a decent spot to build and actually just set up. Maybe not necessarily for the end game, but certainly a great spot for the early game, as it is easily defendable from other wild creatures. You just have the ramp here on this side, and then the back side here. But overall, it's a pretty decent spot. Like I said, resources, though, you're going to have to make a journey. There's not much around here outside of the small little mountain that I just mentioned, which is right over there. And then it's going to be located right here on the map. Now, since we're down here, we cannot not talk about Herbivore Island. That's going to be included in pretty much every base location video. And here it is. Why is it great? Well, because only herbivores spawn here, and nothing here is going to try to kill you. The only time you're going to die is if you do something stupid. You do have a water pen here if you want to go through and put some of your water creatures, and if you're extremely lucky. I did see, yeah, there it is. You can also, if you're very, very lucky, get a unicorn spawn on this area, which means they're never going to die unless they, for some reason, do something dumb, so you can wait to come back through and tame them later. Equises don't spawn here, but for some reason, the unicorn can. Most people tend to build their base in here, though. There is 3 explorer nodes on the island in total. I believe 1 up here, 1 over there, and 1, I think... No, 1's back here, 1's down here on the beach, and 1 is located just up here on this little cliff. You do also have a bunch of metal up here, and there are Ankies that spawn here, and PTs. So it's a great place to go through and get your first flyer if you have not already. And you can even get an Anki to go through and get some harvesting going for your metal early on. And of course, Herbivore Island is located here in the southern right of the map. Alright, now moving on over to the next location, it's actually going to be quite the journey. So we're going to be flying straight through the ocean all the way on over here. Ignore that. That was for testing purposes. And here we are. South Zone 2, which is honestly probably the easiest spawn in all of the island, as there are very few creatures that actually spawn here in comparison to the rest of the map. Now, there's 3 locations in this specific zone that I'm just going to count as one base, because you can pick whichever 3 you'd like. First up is going to be this area here. It's going to go through and have all of the water access. You do have just 1 point on that side to defend, and 1 point on that side. If you're playing in PvE or solo, then you really do not have anything to worry about. You pretty much can have everything you want here in this little section. Move on over, the only thing you have to worry about is going to be Dinosuchus. They now spawn here in place of Sarcos at times, so you do got to be a little careful about that, as they do pack a punch. The next location is going to be here on this cliff edge. With this cliff edge here, it is pretty easy to go through and build a really large, respectable base. You can actually put some water tames down here, as long as you deal with that guy, or just block this area off. And just on the other side here, from all 3 of these locations, it's good to know that 1, there is this mountain here, which contains the metal and crystal. And then actually all along this riverbed here is a bunch of small little metal rocks. And these little rocks can give you some decent amounts of metal. You can see a couple in there now. You also have little coral reefs just along the edge here as well that can grant you small amounts of oil in the early game. So do not go through and forget those. It's actually a pretty pivotal resource in the beginning. Now lastly, the 3rd location that I was going to mention here is going to be this zone. I actually featured a short when I first started this channel, and it was god-awful, so don't go watch it. But yeah, basically you've got this space in here. You can build all throughout here. You can actually build up into here too. You got a small little space on the backside here. And lots of room to work with. You can even build cliff platforms all up and around, as you can see here. So you have lots of cool creative ideas you can go through and do in this area. The only downside is resources, you're kind of SOL. Everything but that little metal mountain and the small little amounts of resources here, or what's deep underwater, which you're probably not going to want to go to in the early game, is pretty far. It's a pretty far journey. So if you want some aesthetics and you don't mind the awful journey, then this is one of the coolest places to go through and build in the game. And this is where it's located on the map. Alright, now moving over from South Zone 2, our next location is going to be bringing us closer to the Red Obelisk. So we're going to fly on over here, and essentially you will see that there's going to be this little inlet. That's how you know you're going to be in the right location. We're going to be passing that little inlet here, though, and we're going to be moving on over to the other side, and you will see this really nice little island. Again, though, being south on the map, resources here you'll be kind of strapped on, but as you can see, it is very easily defendable from all wild creatures. You only have one side to worry about. You are literally right next door to the Red Obelisk, and you have lots of great explorer nodes. This is actually one of the more common places people will spawn, is going to be in this general vicinity, either here or over on Crags Island to go through and get started. This island, though, has got lots of raptors and carnos, so if you want to set up over here, it might be a bit safer for you. You do also have some water to work with just below you, and there is also the swamp right over here. You're far enough away to where it's not a danger to you, but close enough where you have access to some of its resources and its creatures. And it's going to be located just right here on the map. Now, speaking of Crags Island, we're going to head on over here. I'm going to call this an honorable mention because I don't think it's that great of a location, but it is something to consider. And that's going to be on the back side here. You do have the new rework section in ASA, and it's a fairly flat area to go through and work with. The only downside is that on this island, you will have a Titanosaur spawn, which can cause some troubles. They won't necessarily be an issue for you unless they stomp on you, but it's just annoying if you're working in your base and you have a bunch of ground shaking. So it's a decent spot, and it looks really cool. But again, this is the farthest point away from the northern section. It's the most southern buildable land space, so you are very far and removed from all resources. So do consider that, not something I would advise for anybody who likes to make quick, efficient trips. Alright, now moving on over from this specific location, we're going to be heading straight towards the Red Obelisk. Now once you get to Red Ob, you will see some waterfalls here on the right. You'll see one on the bottom, which I'm not a big fan of, as there are raptors galore here on the beach itself. So if you move on up just past the second waterfall, you will find a small little island hanging out here in the middle. There's a lot less raptors in this area. They do still exist on the edges here. But if you go through and build a couple of walls here on the side, it's actually a pretty safe area. You have access to the water immediately, and you're a little bit farther north than the location down there. It means you're slightly closer to some actual resources. Now, this does look like a swamp, and it is kind of a swamp, but I have never seen a capro here. I've never seen a berry here. I've only seen piranhas, and they are also very rare to actually spawn here. But what's really interesting is just inside this lake here, for whatever reason, there happens to be an obsidian node spawn. It's only one, I believe, but it'll save you the trip early on for having to go too far north. So you have all this water here. Oh, there are some piranhas here. Okay. Yep, see? Nibbling on my toes. But yeah, so I mean, that's a great place to go through and start to acquire some obsidian early on, but eventually you will have to make a journey north, quite far north in fact, to acquire some of the late game, end game resources. And here's where this is going to be located on the map. Alright, now moving on over from this location, we're actually going to be heading just over to this side here, and you'll find this very beautiful, long peninsula. It's not crazy large, but it is extremely flat. When I say large, I mean it's not very wide, but you do have a whole bunch of space to work with. I think this might be the largest flat space to work with in the entire game, at least on this map specifically. And yeah, if you want to build a base here, this place is sweet. There's going to be nothing really bad that spawns over here. You'll get some raptors, and there are alpha raptors that will spawn on that side of the water. But it is a very, very safe place. I really like this place. And the farther north you, of course, get, the closer you're going to be to some of the more vital resources. You also have the deep ocean cave that's going to be down below here as well. And you can actually use this pen here for some ocean creatures. You do have megalodons that will spawn in here, and even alpha megalodons. But if you do block off a specific section, you can actually go through and use this for your water tames. But then moving over from this location, we're going to be going just a little bit farther over, which is going to be this cliff here, which I actually prefer if I want to basically build an all-around base. I think that's the better flat space to work with than the larger space. But this place is going to be a little bit more elevation to work with. You have more resources closer to you, as that plateau there will eventually run out of trees and bushes. Here you have access to this whole forest. So you have way more to work with. And then if you want to, you can actually just fence off this little corner of the water here for an actual water pen if you want to do any breeding or to store your water dinos down here. And then just on the other side of that, of course, you start to get into the swamp-like territory and the redwoods. And this is going to be located just here on the map. Now going from this location to the next, we're going to be flying over straight to the redwoods. And you will see this plateau sticking out just before the redwoods on the border of the swamp and the redwoods. Now, I would not advise you to build on this side, as I'm pretty sure the rhinos can spawn right up in here. So I would recommend you build over here in this location, as it's still going to be a decent flat space. You'll have the swamp and the redwoods on your doorstep, but hopefully far enough removed to stay out of all the danger. And then since you are going to be located right here, we're getting closer and closer to the middle of the map. You are now actually fairly close to the volcano here, and you will find this plateau. Let me just fly on down here for you to see it. Located right here. Alright, now moving over from this location here, we're going to move just to the right. You could almost consider this the same location, but I would say it's slightly different. And that's going to be here. You'll notice there's this little plateau here, and basically the only way to get to it from the upper section is just a small little area. I've never seen a creature spawn over here. But then you have this little area here with the ruins, which has only one path that leads up to it. So it's not a massive space to work with, but it is an elevated position with water directly just right here. So basically, if you want to build a smaller, more humble base and still feel somewhat safe in the center part of the map, it's going to be located right here. And of course, all of the resources, you have the mountain facing this direction in the redwoods, and you got the volcano located here, and the snow biome's not too far off. Alright, now moving over from this location here, you will see the ruins. So we're going to go just over here, and we're going to be heading just to the other side here, and you'll see a waterfall directly below you, and then another waterfall. So you do have the water cave down below here, and then of course you see the snow biome is getting ever so slowly closer. And yeah, the waterfalls here are actually just more of a picturesque thing than anything. A lot of people really like building on this waterfall here on the top. It makes some really cool designs. This is definitely not the easiest location to build in, and it is still pretty dangerous, not greatly defendable either. 100% a PvE or even a solo type base, but one of the coolest looking places for sure on the island. And you'll find that located just here on the map, and you actually do have decent resources nearby. Now from this location, what we're going to actually do is we're going to be heading over to the snow biome here. And in the snow biome, you will find all of the little ice and the glaciers out here, but instead, we're going to be going inside the glacier. And just inside the glacier, it's actually going to be right here. You'll see that there's this water source on the inside here, and this is what we're looking for. And on the inside here, the reason this location is great is you actually have all of this area up until about here that's completely blocked off. So you could go through and extend out here farther. You will just need to fill in the ceilings, but it's great because it's all protected, and you have water right here on the inside of your base, and you can even find things like Ankies in here. You do, of course, have to deal with all of these snow different predators, which is a very long list of things that do want to try to kill you and eat you. There are different sections, of course, as well throughout this location that you can choose to build, but having water right here on your doorstep is probably going to be one of the best bets. You do also have access to silica pearls out here in this region as well, so it is a pretty good location. Just make sure, of course, you have some fur, because it's going to be getting pretty cold. And that's going to be located just right here, right along. So you'll see the water here leading up into this crack, and this is the crack you'll want to go into. And the crack you want to go into. Maybe I should never repeat that line again. But yeah, here you are. Here's the coordinates. All right. Let's move on over to the next location before I say anything else ridiculous. And that's going to be the very back here. This one's kind of weird as there's not a lot going on here. But since penguins no longer really spawn here, you're not at really much risk of blocking too much. You do got a couple of oil nodes here on the back. You do, of course, have the obsidian rocks here on the front, but overall, it's a pretty large space to work with. You do also have some water to work with here in your base, and there's also going to be more spawns in here. You'd also have an access to actually go through and have your water tames slip in and out of here. So it's a really great place for water tames, a flat space, and if you don't mind living like an Iceman, being far secluded and removed from everything else, but also on the doorstep of danger, as you can see all of those amazing resources just across the way. Nothing out here is going to come kill you in the PvE sense, so it's a pretty good spot overall. And you're also, close to a lot of resources. You got the snow mountain up north here, and you got the volcano located over there. And here's where it's at on the map. All right, now for the next location, I actually flew us over here without showing you, as it's quite far away. The last location was clear across all the way on the other side of the snow biome here. But you'll see one specific mountain here with the blue obelisk. The other mountain here, so of course you have access to great resources. Now this is more of a, if you want to start in the snow biome early and get lucky, or even if you're a hermit and want to live your life alone in solitude, and you don't really want to have much to take care of. You got a couple of metal rocks here. You do have some crystal just outside your base as well. Everything just right here in close proximity. You also have silica pearls just on your doorstep as well. But where we're going is deep inside, right here in the waterfall. As you can see, there are a couple of foundations that I laid down here. There is an explorer note. But it's about 2.5, maybe 3 foundations wide, and you can, of course, can build up if you want to make a second level. You do have some room to work with here. But yeah, it's pretty hidden. I mean, not a lot of people know about this base that I'm aware of, because I haven't really seen it featured whatsoever. But it's a pretty small location to work with. Maybe people don't feature because they're blocking the note, but yeah, if you want to live a life of solitude, this is the place to be, and the waterfall is located here, just in the middle of the snow biome. Now, if you're not feeling like solitude, you can actually turn directly around here, and you will notice this location here is a really nice flat island. The only downside of the building here is you do have a couple of silica pearl spawns here along the edge, and you wouldn't want to block those as they're pretty easy to grab in fairly shallow water, so you definitely don't want to get rid of those. But it's a decent spot to build, and it's pretty flat too. You, of course, do have lots of angry bad stuff that wants to kill you. Dire wolves, Tyrannuses, Carnos, little piggies. Lots of bad stuff here, so you'll certainly need to build a lot of protection, but you have a lot of room to work with. And you're on the northern side, so you do have quite a few different resources here, and the obelisk is just up north here. So yeah, not too bad of a spot to work with, and here's where it's going to be located. Alright, now the next location is actually going to be just north of the waterfall we went inside. So there's going to be a second waterfall here. You're going to be passing this waterfall, leading up to the third waterfall. So one of my favorite locations in ASC when it came to living in the snow biome, and that is right here. You have this massive flat space to work with. You do have Archies and pretty much lots of bad stuff that wants to kill you. Everything here wants to kill you. But you got obsidian right here on your doorstep. So you can just build back here, and it's one of the few locations where you're merging between the biomes. You've got the snow biome that's kind of merged with the jungle biome. The snow biome kind of ends right here. So you're on the border of 2 different biomes, so you can actually build your base halfway in between the 2. This side's going to be a lot colder than that side. And then you do also have a water source right here next close to you. And I believe somewhere up here there might also be some beaver dams. I forget if they spawn here. I'm fairly certain, though, you can find some dams over here. If you're lucky. But yeah, it's a decent spot, a lot of space to work with. Being in the north, you have access to all the great resources, all the great tames. Same thing as the last couple locations, and it's going to be located right here on the map. Alright, now I did go through and move us a little bit farther over, as the last location was just past the snow mountain there. But as you can see here, we've got another elevated plateau, kind of here in the middle of everything. You can get some Rexes that can come up here by just casually walking up the steps. That is the one downside. But it's elevated above pretty much everything else, and this is going to be where it's located on the map. Being on the north, though, you do have access to the ice mountain here, you have this mountain here, the oasis, Carno Island. Pretty much everything that you could possibly want is going to be in this region, minus maybe the organic polymer. But yeah, it's a pretty decent spot. The only downside is the Rexes, but if you build up some walls, you should not have too many concerns. Now, if you don't like this spot because of how small it is, then actually just north over here, we're going to be heading over to this location here. And as you can see, you still have a cliff's edge. You got one way coming up here. You do have to protect the back, of course. But it's a pretty large flat spot, also in very hostile territory. But if you don't mind that, or you get far enough in the game where you're not worried about that and you want somewhere cool to set up, because these trees, for example, have those frosted tips from like the snow biome, but then you also, again, have normal trees. You're kind of in between the two biomes yet again, so you have creatures from both of them going to be patrolling the area. That's going to be located just right here on the map. Overall, the exact same resources as the last location and a proximity to all the other points of interest as well. Alright, now moving on over from this location, you'll notice the snow mountain here to the right, the other mountain here to the left, and the volcano just peeking out in the distance with the sunset there. It's looking quite nice. We're basically just going to be headed towards the volcano. You will notice the Titano spawns right here in the middle between everything, but if you just keep on moving and have a very careful eye here, you will notice down here in the forest that there is actually a ruin right here. So you can see basically in between this volcano, this mountain, and this mountain, you can see pretty much, I think, all three of the obelisks. And there's a Quetzal. And it's going to be located right here on the map. But basically, you have this enormous ruin that is very well hidden, if you will, from the prying eyes. Once you're down here, obviously, you could see everything, but from the sky, you may not see as much. I would not recommend this for any large scale, based on a server perhaps, but for a single player with a creative mind, you have a lot of room and a lot of unique different structures to work with. Obviously, you know, you have the hole here on the front with the Explorer note. You got a whole bunch to work with in the back too. So I'm not a big fan of ruin bases in general, but this one and that river one I mentioned previous in the video really do stand out. So I definitely think they're great places to go through and experiment with, and you can come up with something pretty cool if you'd like. Alright, now moving over from the ruin location below, this video would not be complete if we did not feature a base in every single biome for the most part, and of course that leaves us with the redwoods. Now virtually you could throw down a platform pretty much anywhere in the redwoods. You do also have the mountain up here with all your metal, so you don't want to block that. But lots of these different trees, you could just throw down different platforms and they're all going to look great. There's not too many major differences between all of them. But I will say over here is a pretty common spot by the lake. I've never been a big fan of building on the redwoods because Thylas, that's all, just Thylas, that's scary. But these do have a bunch of close proximity, like all these trees that are near the lake, they're all pretty close together. So you should be able to kind of daisy chain or link them together and build a really cool area. And because of that, you'll have water and access just down below, which is usually one of the big problems in building with the tree platforms is water intake, but it's right down below you. You're also going to be near the swamp cave, which is going to go through and give you access to plenty of cementing paste, all that you could ever need. Loads of chitin. As mentioned previously, you do have the Redwoods Mountain going to be right here. You do have the volcano here. So overall, yeah, great location. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for the best place locations. I wanted to throw this together because Ark is free on the PlayStation, so I figured there'd be a plethora of new players coming in wondering where they should build. Alright, well I hope you all enjoyed the video, and if you did, then please consider subscribing. And if you want to see more Ark content now, then check out the Ark playlist I currently have. And click the notification bell to stay up to date on all Ark content coming out in the future.